traditional family in the United States has always been the idea of two heterosexual parents who are married, have children together, stay together to raise their children, and grow old together. Sounds pretty simple, right? Nowadays, this is not as common as it used to be, and no longer the majority of families. Studies have shown that fewer than half of children under the age of 18 in the United States are living in a home with two married heterosexual parents in their first marriage. From 1960 to 2013, the percentage of single-parent households has increased from 9% to 34%, which emphasizes the idea that single-parent households have become more common and more normal in today's society than they were in previous years. Although single-parent households have become seemingly inevitable in today's society, the effects of this lifestyle cause major setbacks for children emotionally, psychologically, socially, and last but surely not least, academically.
Of children living in America, these are the results we found. 46% have two parents in their first marriage. 26% are living with a single parent. 15% have two parents that are remarried. 7% have cohabiting parents, and 5% don't have parents at all. By looking at this chart, it is evident that living with both biological parents or two adoptive parents improves the quality of a parent-child relationship.
Do you have a mom and a dad?
I have both.
Oh, okay.
Are they married?
Yeah, they are. Andrew and Kelly.
Do you have any brothers and sisters?
I have a brother. His name's Adam. He's in the sophomore.
So I have a mom and a dad, and they're married, and then I have an older brother.
I live with my mom and her boyfriend and my two half-brothers.
Go.
I have married parents.
I live with my mom, Fanny, and my dad, Fraser.
I have my mom, dad, and two brothers.
I have a mom and a dad and a little sister.
I have a mom and a dad and an older sister.
And I have a mom and dad and three sisters.
Have your parents ever been divorced?
No.
Dear Mom and Dad, I know that you are hurting. I'm hurting too. I feel and feed off your tension, fear, and shock. Although I am young and cannot express verbally what is happening in our lives, I am still feeling the impact. My heart is broken every time I have to give up a parent. My sense of security is lost. Please don't assume that I am resilient. Please don't assume that my life will be exactly as it was, and that I will continue to feel the same love from both of you. I am a human being just like you. My needs are just like yours. I need love, attention, nurturing, stability, consistency, affection, understanding, patience, and mostly to be wanted. When you fight over me or put me in the middle of your argument, you are sending me the message that winning with each other is more important than my life. I am learning from you that it is better to be right than to be loved. You are teaching me that I came from a person who is unlovable and wrong, and that I am somehow wrong too. When you confide your hurt in my heart, you are storing up adult pain and robbing me of my childhood. You are taking away my belief that love is unconditional and replacing it with a message that tells me to become hard and not to love because I will get hurt and not be able to recover. You may not understand this today, and I am so small that you are not thinking about my future, but you are putting me at a greater risk of getting a divorce myself. At times, you are risking my safety to fill a void in your heart. My safety is your job. Without you and your protection, I am unshielded from the world. This will manifest in irrational fears for me, because I will stay in a state of fight or flight for most of my life. Someday, this initial shock will wear off, but how you choose to parent me through this crisis will never wear off. I will either feel your sense of selflessness, support, protection, or I will have a scar on my heart with a message that reads, "Good things happen to good people. I must be bad." Thoughtfully, the child of divorce.
1 year is the average length of divorce proceedings. 3 years is the average time taken to remarry. 30 is the average age to get a divorce, and 10% of the U.S. population is divorced. The chance of divorce goes up with every subsequent marriage. Of people married, 24% are in their first marriage, 34% are in their second, and 42 are in their third.
Have you, as a teacher, ever seen a difference between kids who come from a divorced household versus a married household?
The answer is yes. When I taught freshmen for a decade at North Oldham High School, freshmen tend to struggle a little bit more. The expectations for homework wasn't the same at moms as it was for dads. So dad would make the kid do homework right away, and mom would let the child have a little bit of time to themselves before they had to get into their homework. When the kid didn't do well, mom would respond differently than dad, and kids didn't really know how to manage that yet. Now I teach mostly juniors and seniors, so I would tell you that students that come from divorce homes actually tend to be a little bit more well-adjusted because change and disruptions to their daily patterns don't really affect them. They're so used to having to pack differently for dad's house than mom's house, or we have this experience at mom's and this experience is different at dad's, or discipline's different here or there. So, and it doesn't mean that students of divorce homes are better than students of married homes. But they tend to be more well-adjusted because they've had to kind of manage things on their own sometimes. Where if your mom and dad are in the same house, you go home to the exact same environment every day, there are no transitions, and difficulties, with your schedule tend to not be something that you have to deal with on a regular basis because both mom and dad are there to help you. Now again, we're talking in generalizations because not every married home is healthy and not every divorced home is unhealthy. But juniors and seniors tend to be more well adapted if they've had to make those adjustments on their own at some point over their life. When students will go to college, it is a lot less emotionally toying for students of divorced families. Why? Because they've already kind of had that feeling of displacement in their lives. They've had to work through that emotionally. They've come to terms with it. So moving on to something else isn't as scary, it isn't as different for them as what it might be for a student that's lived in the exact same house, same bedroom, same parents, same dynamic structure all the way through. Again, one is not better or worse than the other, but you can absolutely see a difference. Occasionally you will have a student that shows no sign of whether mom and dad are together or mom and dad are divorced, and as a teacher you hear it and you go, really? I've had you as a student for 2 years. I had no idea that life was like that for you at home. And that is good in some cases because you know that the student is able to manage it. They're able to kind of come to terms with their life outside of school and still be able to be really successful in school. That also can be maybe go the other direction, to the other extreme, is maybe they've gotten really good at hiding their life from the outside world, and that can be psychologically damaging as well. So it really just depends on the kid, but there are definitely advantages and disadvantages to both situations.
Parents married?
Yes.
Yes.
No.
Yeah.
Yes. No.
No. No.
No.
No.
1,300 new step families are formed daily. 42% of adults report having a step relative. Approximately 1/3 of all weddings in America today form step families. 13% of adults are step parents, 15% men who are stepdads, and 12% women who are step moms.
How do you think family dynamics impacts a student's athletics?
I think it's very important to have a stable family dynamics. It's good that the kid can depend on both parents being involved in their lives. I see a lot of kids that have trouble from divorced homes that have some issues with that, and the parents, they end up actually playing the parents against each other. Neither parent wants to be the good guy, bad guy kind of deal, and that plays a role in how they behave and are involved. And again, that's kind of what coaches need to do. Sometimes they have to play the role of that third parent and help guide those kids so they make the right decisions and able to make good decisions.
I do find that there's a correlation between age of when the events occur and academic performance. The younger a child is, the less that they maybe would cognitively understand what's going on and be able to process through those emotions. And so I work specifically with 6th graders, and I find that they're really in that kind of like middle zone where some of them are more mature than others and can process through it on their own. Others really need a lot of check-ins and making sure that they're processing it appropriately and not blaming themselves and things like that.
What do you do as an educator to help your students that are struggling?
I think one of the first things I would try to do to help my students is make sure that they know that I am here for them. That if they wanted to talk, if they had something that they were dealing with outside of room 605, they could come to me and share that. Not all educators take that approach. Not all students feel comfortable sharing with teachers. I want you to share it with me, because if you don't share it with me, or you don't share it with a school counselor or a school administrator, who are you sharing it with? You can't keep that stuff bottled up. That's one of the things we struggle with students is they seem academically to be just fine. They seem to be dotting all the I's and crossing all the T's from a classroom work standpoint, but they're really struggling with some things on their own. And so we need to create those relationships with students to give them a place to be able to open up. What I try to do is be as consistent as I possibly can. I am a human, so I have different moods that I go through. I try not to bring them into this classroom. I want you to see the same person every single day. That doesn't make me better or more healthy from a mental standpoint than anybody else. It just means part of my job, part of my responsibility is to create that consistency for you, so that every single day, no matter what kind of morning you had at mom's or what kind of morning you had at dad's, what kind of transition you had last night after a soccer game, when you come into my room during the school day, you're going to get the same experience. And that hopefully creates a safe space for you as well. And then you can kind of get away from what's happening to you in your outside world and just focus on that moment and be present and try to let some of that other stuff go.
What is the psychological impact on children who come from hard backgrounds, such as divorce or single parents?
We have found a lot of research with trauma, and divorce is one of those incidents that would be considered a traumatic experience for kids. The more traumatic experiences that a child may have, we do see a higher impact in terms of academic performance and even just social emotional well-being. But just because parents are divorced doesn't necessarily mean that the kid will respond as if it was a traumatic experience. So I would say there's some other factors that are involved that we call resiliency factors. If they have a good peer group or they're connected to their school in a meaningful way, that can kind of offset some of those psychological impacts.
They have what they believe about themselves, and they go to school and compare that to the other kids' social mask. The other kids may be from as volatile a situation as they are, but the other kids wear a social mask, and so your kid is damaged inside, and he compares it to the other kid's social mask and thinks he's lesser than. He has a damaged personal truth. He feels like a second-class citizen. And the problem is, you generate the results in life you think you deserve. The fallout from this is really very clear. What they live as a product of this is astounding. The mistakes that people make in divorces that the kids have to live, every event's a pressure cooker. Everything they go through, it just builds up on them time and time again. What do you think a birthday party is like for them?
We do it all summer.
Oh, of course you do. What do you think they feel like if it's Christmas time and they go be with one of you versus the other? They feel they're betraying one to be with the other. The biggest, most frequent mistakes in a divorce and remarriage, they're very traditional. The biggest mistakes you can make is sabotage. You use a child as a pawn. You use them to get back at your partner. You use a child for information or to manipulate your ex. You transfer your feelings onto them. You force them to choose sides. Family events become pressure cookers. You use them for companionship. You treat the child as an adult. You become too emotionally needy. Or you overindulge them because you feel guilty. You baby them. Oh, it's okay, baby. That's the last thing they need. I got 2 rules with children. You never, ever burden them with situations they cannot control. And you do not ask them to deal with adult issues. Y'all are violating every single rule. And he's paying the price for it. It's time to stop. It's time to stop. It's time to stop running your own agenda. And if you're in a divorce situation at home, you got to grade your own paper. It's time to start running your own agenda. It's time to start being a fiduciary for your child or your children and put their interest ahead of your own. It's time to stop venting. They have needs, and those needs become exaggerated. That they need to feel acceptance. They need to feel assurance. They need to feel freedom of guilt or blame for the divorce. They need structure. They need a stable parent who has the strength to conduct the business of the family.
Are there correlations between depression and divorce?
I would say yes. If you're familiar with ACEs, the Adverse Childhood Experiences Study, that they have found that children that have experienced parent separation or divorce, that there is a lot of correlations later in life with physical and mental health.
Are there correlations between the development of psychological disorders and divorce?
Potentially, yes. Like going back to that same ACEs study, they found at Kaiser Permanente out in California, they did a bunch of research and stuff, and there's 9 different things on that list, and divorce is one of them, and it has shown that it can cause all kinds of mental health diagnoses later in life. Not necessarily just divorce, but the other ones as well.
Most of us can manage the health consequences of a breakup, but the worst is when it affects your kids. And our next question comes to us via email from Darlene in Lexington, Kentucky, who writes, "Hi, Dr. Shears. My husband and I are going through a divorce, and it seems to really be taking a toll on our children. One is 12, the other is 7. Are there any health repercussions I should worry about? And what can we do to help them through this?" Can never forget about the kids in a breakup.
Oh, man. Yeah, that's probably the hardest part about a breakup, or at least a divorce, is the kids. And, separation, divorce can have a profound effect on kids' health, both mental and physical. And the two are kind of intertwined. The mental health will affect the physical health. The physical health will affect the mental health. And, we've seen, typical things I see, obviously, depression, anxiety, oftentimes changes in sleep habits, nightmares, insomnia, bedwetting. The stress, the lack of sleep, and lack of good nutrition is a perfect recipe for an immune system that isn't going to work as well, and kids get sick more frequently. About 20 to 35% more frequently, kids will get sick if there's a divorce.
Yeah, but you also don't want to not divorce if you're having problems with the relationship, because that can also be a problem with the kids, because you don't want to involve them in fighting, or they see that, and so it's not like you want to avoid that if it's really what needs to happen.
If it is a bad relationship, oftentimes the kids will do better off if there is the breakup.
But if you're in a relationship that doesn't feel right, there are ways to make it less impactful on a child's health, just like your own health. So let's talk about that.
There's no doubt that it's hard, but the kids that come out of this with the least amount of emotional scars are the kids whose parents are getting along the best outside of the marriage. High levels of conflict during the divorce and after the divorce, that kind of signals the kids that are going to do the worst. So in other words, if, even though you're not staying together, the better you get along, the better better off the kids are going to be. It's tough, and I've been through it. Sure, the pain of divorce as a parent, as an adult, is hard. Seeing your kids go through it is 10 times as hard.
So it sounds to me your lesson is, if you're getting a divorce, children are involved, that the divorce may be inevitable, but your ability to work together through the issues of children are paramount if you want your kids to do well, because you do see parents pitting the kids, putting them in the middle, and it's heartbreaking, because then the kids become commodities in the divorce battle.
That is so selfish for a parent to do that. If you really look at why a parent's usually doing that, and I've seen it happen, a lot, and it's usually for selfish reasons. You got to think about the kids first. Teenagers especially are 4 times more likely to abuse alcohol or drugs if there's a divorce. So you got to really pay attention to this stuff.